The next chart we'll talk a little bit about Illinois. At the bottom bullet points, it says you can transfer as much money. So Jim, your brother Paul can transfer all of that to Mrs. Allen and pay no tax, because you can transfer as much to your spouse and pay no tax. All 52 billion or whatever it is can go. You can transfer as much between husband and wife, provided both U.S. citizens. You can also say, well, geez, my wife's okay with $5 million. I'm going to leave the rest of it to the, the Everybody Should Learn How to Fly Foundation. And you can transfer as much to a charity as you wish. So those are unlimited marital and charitable deductions. Really important concept that is newish to the federal law. It would say, and I use this example when I'm meeting clients, pretend I like to stop off on my way to O'Hare at a little place by the river called Rivers Casino. So my wife has learned this, so she holds all of our money. She holds all, this is a nice hypothetical, all $12 million. I'm saving it up for a jet. So she's holding all $12 million, and I pass away coming back from the casino. Under federal law, there's a concept called portability, where my wife can take my unused federal exemption and claim it on her estate tax return to shield the wealth as it transfers to the kids at her second death. This is new-ish to the law, I think about 4 years. Works for Fed, doesn't work for Illinois. In Illinois, it's use it or lose it. And this is what I really wanted to get to for everybody. So if you go to the second page, you say, okay, I get that. So Mrs. Rhodes has $12 million. She's got Mike's unused federal exemption. She's got no worries about any federal tax, because she's got $22 million under today's exemption amounts that she could shield. But she lives in Illinois. She loves voting for our governors because she loves to see them locked up eventually. So, what does she do? She stays in Illinois. In Illinois, we're not worried about the federal death tax because Mrs. Rhodes doesn't have $22 million, but I told you she has 12. What does that mean? $12 million. Take a look at this chart. It'll actually have an asterisk that says you get a deduction at the federal level for state death taxes paid. So you can, Mrs. Rhodes doesn't have to write it. She's gone. It happens after she dies if she's an Illinois resident. But the kids would lose effectively $1.2 million to Springfield. It's a $12 million estate. So if you look at the effective rate over $4 million, it's a 14% effective rate over $4 million. But that's a lot of money. So the next one that I have is a great organization called BDF, Balsam de Virno and Falls. They are financial planners. This is the best state tax comparison handout I've ever seen. I was at Wrigley at the end of the season, sadly, regular season, not postseason. And I told the fella, you haven't updated the one from 2015 for a long time. I will buy your beers. And I'm talking Wrigley, I'm not talking down the south side. At Wrigley, if you update this thing. So he updated for me. The spoiler alert is on page 12. That is your state tax chart comparison. It'll tell you income taxes, whether or not they tax retirement accounts, whether or not they tax pensions. And there's 13 states, I think I counted. There's 13 states at the third of the far right column that has an estate tax. That estate tax is, you'll see the number 4 million by Illinois. So Mrs. Rhodes, with $12 million in her pocket, says, I'd rather not spend 1.2 to Springfield. I think I could buy a house in Lake Geneva. How much Wisconsin death tax is there? 0. Great chart. And I did get permission from him.
Not applicable to 0?
It's 0. And so if there's not a number in that box, it's 0.
That's great.
So it's a really neat chart.
When the person dies, aren't they locked into the state at death?
So I was when I died. I died an Illinois resident. My wife has all the money. I can transfer as much as I want. Illinois and the feds won't charge it. My wife can trace her way all the way back to the Mayflower, but she's a U.S. citizen. So she is a U.S. citizen. I can transfer as much as I want, no tax. She's got the 12 million bucks. She's alive. She can go on the other side of the cheese curtain and pay zero death tax. So it is where you die domiciled as to what state death taxes you have to tend to, generally.
You know, after 9/11, establishing state residency has become complicated. Do you run into this?
I deal with it all the time. It's a great question, and it's a big dollar question. There's a lot. And the reason it's complicated is domicile under the law is a intent test. It's where do I intend to remain? My daughter's out in Boston. I'm going tomorrow to visit my daughter in Boston. She's not a resident of Massachusetts. She's intending to come back to Illinois. She's just there temporarily. So she has not established a new domicile in Massachusetts. She's there temporarily. So it's an intent test. They like to say 180 days plus one, and there's a lot of metrics. And you pick where you want to be, and the best way you can explain it is if you think of a scale with BBs, you want the weight on the state you want to be in. You want to minimize the bad state, maximize the good state. And that's a very fact-specific thing. Illinois, as much as we bemoan and how our income taxes went from up to 4.95%, we still do not tax retirement accounts, pensions, and Social Security. So if I have $3.8 million, do I care about Illinois? I'm sorry, Mrs. Rhodes, forget about her for a second. If I have $3.8 million, I have no death tax issues. If it's all retirement account money, look at this chart and say, well, I moved to Arizona. That's 4.65 state income tax for every percent out of every dollar I take out of my retirement accounts. So it's you got to be thoughtful and mindful on that stuff. So I don't have a handout for this next one, but I wanted to kind of walk you through in 5. In 5, it talks about thinking about estate taxes. We're here in Illinois, so let's think about it as Illinois residents for a moment. My wife, Corleen, and I each have $4 million of Illinois exemption. And let's for a moment say my wife and I, I'm sorry dear, I just cut our net worth in half. We're down to $6 million now. We each have $3 million. Again, like Rivers Casino, but I didn't lose it all. I pass away, I just leave it all to my wife for her to deal with. So now she has my 3 plus her 3, or 6. If you flip back to that chart, you'll see that $6 million is a $456,000 Illinois death tax because she's $2 million over the line. Why? Because I stacked my wealth on top of her wealth. There is no portability. I did not use my $4 million Illinois exemption. I wasted it. So when my money went to my wife and qualified for a marital deduction, there was no tax, but she died the next week of a broken heart without me. So then the kids are a little upset because now we have what I would refer to as the idiot tax or the lazy tax. Had my wife and I done a little bit of planning, there would have been 0 death tax. We each had 3. We're under the combined 8 million. So looking at the outline, break it down simply. If my wife and I have over $8 million, we are positioned for some Illinois death tax at the second of us to die, assuming that to stay constant. If my wife and I had between $4 and $8 million, my $3 million example, we have to be careful and thoughtful. Because if I stacked it all on her side and she dies the next week, we would have what I refer to as the idiot tax. If my wife and I have total less than $4 million, I got $1 million and she's got 2, it doesn't matter. So if, as a couple, we have less than $4 million of wealth, but remember, life insurance is one of these funny assets. Generally, in my experience, having done this for a long time, about age 70, we're done paying term premiums. Nobody wants to pay a term premium. If you are going and buying permanent insurance, you can fund these things up and maintain that guaranteed death benefit for the long haul. But term insurance generally gets expensive and exceeds price happiness.